A judge handed down a ruling this afternoon that leaves Harry facing costs with no ceiling at all, potentially as much as £34.5 million. Within 24 hours of that story breaking, Meghan reportedly signed a new entertainment role in London.
But Meghan leaking the news of this entertainment return seems to me to be to try and take away the growing suggestions of trouble in the marriage. Because, of course, if she did have no work lined up here, it makes it abundantly clear that she is having to do something she didn't want to do. So by being able to say, there's a big job, but she's not revealing what the job is, she's not revealing how long the job is. I mean, what, is she going to be in EastEnders? I mean, otherwise it's going to be a particularly short shoot. You know, if you're doing a movie, unless she's really committed to like a big TV series, but that seems unlikely.
2 headlines, same week. Not a follow-up story, not a related development weeks later, the exact same week. Read that back and tell me the timing doesn't stop you in your tracks. Mr Justice Nicklin, presiding over Harry's privacy case against the Daily Mail's publisher, reportedly ruled there would be no cap whatsoever on how much of Associated Newspaper's legal costs could be recovered from Harry and his fellow claimants, a group that reportedly includes Elton John. Associated's own lawyers had apparently asked for something closer to $7.5 million. The judge went considerably further, ordering an interim payment of £9.5 million due within days, with the door left wide open for the final bill to climb well beyond that once costs are formally assessed.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that she's suddenly got an acting job that's so big for her. This is so huge. It justifies her moving, giving up California, giving up all of her friends. She's finally got in with a set, multi-millionaires that let her use their private jets and their holiday homes, and she's coming over for a little acting job. She couldn't get work while she was in America, Dan. I mean, living in LA, that is the land of opportunities if you're going to get acting roles. I mean, she was friends with Ted Sarandos. She was getting herself in and out of these circles.
Nicklin was reportedly unsparing in how he described the claimants' conduct, specifically their decision to keep pressing serious allegations even after their own key witness had walked back parts of his evidence. His own language, according to accounts of the ruling, described the cumulative effect as taking the case well outside normal bounds. Unreasonable to a high degree. Picture what it actually takes for a high court judge to write language that direct into a formal ruling. Judges generally choose measured, careful phrasing precisely because their words carry institutional weight and become part of the permanent legal record. When one reaches instead for a phrase like unreasonable to a high degree, attached specifically to a claimant's own conduct rather than the merits of their case, that's not boilerplate. That's a judge going out of his way to make clear this wasn't a close call. In plainer terms, the court didn't just decide Harry lost, it decided he lost in a way that actively invited financial punishment on top of the loss itself. Think about how rare that actually is in ordinary litigation. Cost caps exist specifically so that losing a case doesn't become financially catastrophic beyond the actual dispute, so that people can truly believe in their position, fight for it properly, and lose without walking away destroyed. Removing that protection entirely is a step judges take sparingly, reserved for exactly the kind of conduct Nicklin apparently described.
Meghan is now styling herself. This is a new personality. Meghan decides she's going to be a fashionista. She styles herself on someone. Did Nigella Lawson perhaps, wear lots of black all of the time? Didn't she many years ago? Perhaps that was Meghan's persona when she decided that she was coming on MasterChef. The chances are she was trying to embody someone else, because she doesn't seem to have a personality of her own. But yeah, I think we're going to find she's going to be on some sort of cooking program.
Not simply losing badly, and losing in a way the court itself found deeply objectionable. Any appeal reportedly needs filing by early October. But as things stand, Harry's looking at roughly £12 million landing imminently, with total exposure potentially reaching well beyond that. Numbers like that don't get absorbed quietly, even by someone with considerable personal wealth. Combined with reported declines in speaking fees and an already scaled-back operation in California, this ruling lands at a moment when the broader financial picture already looked considerably shakier than it did 5 years ago. Picture the actual mechanics of what a bill this size means practically. $9.5 million due within days isn't the kind of figure you shuffle between accounts without noticing. It's the kind of number that forces conversations with financial advisors, forces decisions about liquidating assets, forces exactly the sort of scrambling that doesn't stay private for long in a world where every financial move connected to this couple gets scrutinized within hours of happening.
A lot of people were saying, it was so shocking what was going on throughout the entire court case. I mean, even if you're not, up to scratch with understanding all the legalities and everything that was going on, I mean, it played out like a complete and utter circus. And I remember thinking, it sounds like more Harry's legal team and their researchers involved should be the ones, on trial here. They were trying not to just punish a newspaper, not to just get a payout. They were actively foaming at the mouths, trying to destroy all of these people's lives.
Now, the timing question. Barely a day after this ruling made headlines, an entirely different story broke. Meghan reportedly landing a new entertainment role based in the UK. Court rulings run on judicial timetables. Entertainment deals run on production calendars and contract negotiations that can take months. It's entirely possible these two stories landing within a day of each other is pure coincidence, with neither side controlling when the other broke. It's also true that press teams working for high-profile clients sometimes actively manage the sequencing of announcements specifically to bury bad news under better news. And that's not unique to this couple. Nobody outside their actual operation can tell you which explanation applies here. But the timing invited exactly the speculation it's now getting, and that speculation isn't unreasonable on its face. Think about how these operations usually work. A team representing someone in Harry's position typically has weeks, sometimes months, of advance notice before a major court ruling. Legal teams don't get surprised by their own case's outcome the morning it's announced. They know roughly what's coming, they know roughly when it's coming, and they plan communications accordingly. If a positive story happened to be ready and waiting in the wings precisely when a negative one broke, that's either an extraordinary stroke of luck or it's exactly what it looks like from the outside.
Don't worry, Meghan is really coming back because she has a huge role, which is just going to make her lots of money. And of course, she hasn't been forced to come back to the United Kingdom to save the marriage. No, of course not. So Bronte Coy wrote, just 24 hours after Prince Harry and Meghan stunned royal watchers with news they are moving back to the UK, a key reason behind the decision has been revealed. Entertainment sources, those entertainment sources, of course, told news.com.au the Duchess of Sussex had been offered a role in an upcoming project based in the UK, although further details are yet to be shared. Believed to be an acting job, I think.
Let's walk through how the second story actually surfaced. Australian outlet news.com.au, citing unnamed entertainment sources, reported Meghan had been offered a role connected to an upcoming UK-based project with specific details still unclear. Variety confirmed similar reporting soon after, Meghan reportedly eyeing a return to screen work as she and Harry relocated back to Britain. Two outlets on different continents, converging on essentially the same story within a tight window. That kind of speed usually means either genuinely strong sourcing on both ends, or one coordinated release designed to land in multiple markets at once. Before her royal life, Meghan built a real following playing Rachel Zane across 7 seasons of Suits. She largely stepped back from acting after marrying Harry, though she's reportedly set for a cameo in an upcoming Amazon comedy alongside Brie Larson and Lily Collins.
Why do they have to megaphone every single damn thing they do? What?
Well, I'll push back slightly on that and say there were a few rumblings that were going on with all of this. But to the broader point, I do agree with you that I think that lessons should...
More recently, she hosted a Netflix lifestyle series that launched her As Ever brand and appeared as a guest judge on MasterChef Australia. Notice what's actually different about this specific announcement compared to those earlier ventures, though. The lifestyle series was hers, built around her, controlled entirely by her own team from concept to execution. The As Ever brand carries her name on every jar. This new role, whatever it actually turns out to be, apparently isn't that. It's someone else's production, someone else's creative decisions, someone else's paycheck arriving on someone else's schedule. That's a meaningfully different kind of professional arrangement for a woman who's spent the last several years insisting on total creative control over everything with her name attached to it. It's the kind of shift that usually only happens when someone's own leverage has quietly run thinner than it used to be.
According to Taz, however, posting on X, to me, it smells like divorce. Meghan hates the UK, and the feeling is largely returned. She won't want to leave California and her friends. None of it makes sense outside the separation. Nancy Sidley adding, I agree. This has divorce written all over it.
Most mainstream coverage this week has carefully sidestepped the harder underlying question. Not just about finances, not just about the king's health, both of which are reportedly real factors, but about whether this marriage is actually, fundamentally, in a difficult place. Roya Nikkhah, royal editor at the Sunday Times, gave an interview on Times Radio where she was reportedly asked directly whether Harry and Meghan remain together as a couple. Her answer never fully committed either way. She noted Harry is reportedly much happier in the UK than in America, adding that the same likely isn't true for Meghan. Asked what's actually changed for Meghan specifically, her response was that she'd never gotten the sense Meghan had any particular interest in rebuilding bridges with Britain, but she's married to Harry, can see he's missing home, and so she's apparently prepared to give it a try. That's not the answer of someone confidently confirming a happy marriage.
Harry, this is as bad as it could be. He has lost comprehensively, been told by the court that he pursued the claims unreasonably to a high degree, and now faces potential liability of $45 million with a $12.4 million down payment due within days. Good thing Meghan has the acting job. I mean, Tash, I am so happy about this because remember, I feel quite personally about this. Harry was working with this team at Byline, talking about them. Actually, they don't deserve any attention. That is what they want. They're a bunch of crooks, right?
Listen to what she didn't say as much as what she did. No warm anecdote about the two of them planning this together. No mention of Meghan's own excitement about returning. Just a fairly clinical read on Harry's happiness levels, followed by an assumption about what Meghan is presumably willing to tolerate for his sake. That's the language of someone describing accommodation, not partnership. Then there's Omid Scobie, whose messaging has apparently done a complete reversal in recent months. For a long stretch, the line was that everything in Montecito was wonderful, that Harry and Meghan loved their life there completely. Now that same corner is suddenly suggesting the signs were there all along. Reduced staff, a scaled-back foundation, changes that in retrospect look like planning for exactly this kind of move. Watch how convenient that retroactive clarity is. 6 months ago, it was pure sunshine. Now, it was obvious the whole time. Consider what that reversal actually requires you to believe simultaneously. Either Scobie truly didn't know, in which case his previous confident reporting on their happiness was simply wrong.
Breaking right now, there's a reason Meghan Markle has just signed a big bucks entertainment role because her husband, Prince Harry, is facing financial ruin after this bombshell courtroom decision this afternoon, where the judge in his case against the Daily Mail has decided, and this is the right decision, by the way, I back him 100%, that the costs will be uncapped, meaning that Harry and his bunch of hapless celebrities, including Elton John, could be on the hook for £34.5 million.
Built on access that told him nothing real. Or he did know, and chose to publish the sunnier version anyway, only pivoting once the story changed and staying silent no longer made sense. Neither option reflects particularly well on the reliability of what gets reported about this couple in real time, regardless of which one actually happened. Here's the piece that generated the most conversation this week though, a lengthy analysis from Tina Brown, the former Vanity Fair editor. Brown was reportedly fairly sympathetic to Harry and Meghan in the early years, which makes her considerably sharper tone now land differently than criticism from people who never liked them in the first place. That specific history matters more than it might first appear. Journalists who spent years defending this couple against what they saw as unfair press treatment don't typically pivot toward sharp criticism without something actually shifting their view.
They are moving back to the UK together, Jane. Yes, they are, very much.
Oh, did you see the look on her face there? She knows. Just report it, Roya. Be brave. We've reported it here. Like, they are officially together, but the marriage is in deep trouble. They've been deeply unhappy for some time. Now, Plastic Face himself, Mr. Omid Scobie, is back. And ludicrously, after having spent months and months and months trying to say, everything's fine, nothing to see here. They love their life in Los Angeles, California, or Montecito, California. They just love it. Now he's trying to say, and this is why you've got to wake up to these people. Do not be sucked in, because now he's trying to say, oh, we knew all along.
Brown built professional credibility partly on her early access and sympathy toward this exact story. Watching her now write with this level of skepticism represents a real cost to her, not a costless pile-on from someone who never had skin in the game. Brown reportedly confirmed Meghan does have a new UK job, though the exact project remains unclear. Her argument is that this job gives Harry the buy-in he needed from Meghan to finally pursue his own growing desire to leave California behind and go home to a world he actually understands. An unnamed former staffer reportedly described Harry as spending recent years largely moping around their 9-bedroom Montecito home, suing tabloids, and instructing staff to shield Meghan from negative press, with any accidental exposure supposedly triggering a considerably difficult reaction.
Harry and his fellow claimants behaved with such outrageous contempt for legal norms in their case against Associated Newspapers that a judge today decreed there is no limit to how much of the Mail's £34.5 million legal expenses A&L can seek to recover. Both sides will now argue the exact amount due before a specialist cost judge for another year, but Mr Justice Nicklin's excoriating ruling makes it clear it will be a lot.
Treat that specific quote carefully. It's secondhand, anonymous, and about as unverifiable as celebrity reporting gets. Colorful doesn't mean confirmed. That kind of quote circulates precisely because it's vivid, quotable, the sort of thing that makes a headline pop. But strip away the color and ask what's actually being claimed here. A single unnamed source, describing a private moment nobody else was reportedly present for, relayed through a journalist who wasn't in the room either. That's not evidence in any meaningful sense. It's a colorful anecdote doing the work evidence usually does, and the two aren't the same thing no matter how many outlets repeat it. Brown's financial read is more grounded. She reportedly describes real, escalating tension around money. Not simply failing to escape unwanted attention, but genuine pressure building underneath everything. Her take on Meghan specifically stings. She argues Meghan was genuinely talented before setting acting aside for marriage, and that when Suits reruns became an unexpected streaming phenomenon in 2023, a reboot built around Meghan could have been a legitimate payday.
Serial failure in Hollywood is a Harry Potter cloak of invisibility, but at least she didn't have the impenetrable British class system to decode. Harry has never had a real power base there, and she goes on to say their joint irrelevance had reached a tipping point. A job for Meghan frees Harry to make a last run at staying royal before his father dies and his brother ices him out for good. As one of the least self-reflective people in the world, except about his own grievances, Harry is also blessed with a naive obliviousness about the damage he caused his family with the Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, and his scorching memoir, Spare.
One she apparently declined to pursue because, in Brown's phrasing, duchesses don't do ensembles. Fair enough to note plenty of actors decline revisiting old roles for entirely ordinary reasons that have nothing to do with royal pretension. But Brown's version is the one currently defining the narrative. According to Brown, the MasterChef Australia appearance last month reportedly served as something of a turning point regardless of how badly that specific episode actually landed publicly, apparently reminding Meghan how much easier it is to perform in something backed by someone else's machine, rather than carrying the entire commercial weight herself. From there, WME, the agency that's continued representing her, reportedly moved fast to land her something new. There's a particular irony sitting inside that specific claim worth sitting with for a moment.
But for me, I do have a feeling that this is some sort of separation because she loathes this country. And I think for a lot of people, the feeling is definitely returned. She is a narcissist. She's not going to handle being booed. She's not going to like people being negative about her. She's not going to get a good reception. Harry struggles to get a good reception. And this is why they have carefully controlled crowds wherever they go.
MasterChef Australia was, by most public accounts, a fairly rough outing for Meghan. Viewers noted stiffness on camera, and apparent discomfort with the format, coverage that leaned considerably more critical than flattering. If that's actually the moment that convinced her to return to acting, it means her own commercial instincts were essentially telling her the opposite of what critics were saying publicly. That even a poorly received appearance still felt better than the isolation of running her own brand entirely alone. Brown frames the UK move as solving two identity crises in one stroke. Meghan's own misery in London years ago made a full return unlikely for a long time.
You haven't been told every single detail of what Meghan Markle's outfit is wearing, even though she's visiting sick children in a hospital. We know exactly what they're doing, yet these people still try to lie to us and say, oh, no, there is no WhatsApp group. Harry and Meghan do want a private life. They're not actually giving press releases and then telling everybody to leave them alone to respect their privacy.
Meanwhile, Harry's career in America has struggled without the same kind of established social infrastructure to lean on. Brown also claims Harry only told his own father about the move on a Sunday, shortly before it went public. Treat that one with some caution. It's a serious claim about family communication that's hard to independently verify, though it lines up with a pattern several other sources have separately described. According to her sourcing, Camilla remains considerably less forgiving toward Harry than even William, though she's apparently willing to tolerate whatever approach Charles takes, largely for the sake of her husband's peace of mind during treatment.
I feel quite personally about this. Harry was working with this team at Byline. I hate even talking about them, actually. They don't deserve any attention. That is what they want. They're a bunch of crooks, right? Literal phone hackers and just the worst people in the world, genuinely. But he worked with them in his bid to try and destroy me as well. And so I'm so glad that they have now been called out, because it wasn't normal behavior. It wasn't acceptable behavior.
Nobody's heard this from Camilla directly. It's someone's read on her private feelings, filtered through a journalist's sourcing, not a quote from the woman herself. Handle that specific claim the way you'd handle any secondhand account of a private person's internal emotional state. Camilla has spent decades cultivating a public reputation for discretion, rarely if ever confirming or denying reports about her personal feelings toward extended family members. Whoever fed this particular detail to Brown may well be accurately describing the mood inside that household. They may equally be projecting, guessing, or repeating something they themselves heard third hand. Without Camilla's own words attached to it, this stays exactly what it is. One reported impression, nothing more solid than that. Brown predicts William and Catherine keep a full public schedule going forward, staying carefully composed, largely avoiding the Sussexes outside unavoidable family occasions.
But also that the judge has slapped them down, called them out completely. You know, he has allowed them, well, he has said there will be no cap on it. But I do wonder if there is even just a tiny bit, because they did behave, obviously, terribly, but just a tiny bit, whether Harry's statement that he did with Baroness Lawrence had any additional push in that decision.
She suggests Charles Spencer may offer housing at Althorpe, and she argues, somewhat generously, that Harry could actually win back public goodwill if he threw himself into charity work for veterans and sick children. Though she's skeptical he and Meghan can actually manage the sustained quiet required to make that stick. A single word buried in Brown's piece triggered its own wave of speculation, something read by several commentators as a possible hint toward a baking or cooking format rather than straight acting. Given that Nigella Lawson has reportedly just signed on as the new bake-off judge, that particular slot isn't obviously open, which leaves the actual role fairly unclear even after all this coverage.
The evidence wasn't even there strong enough for them to even go to trial. So they have been stressed for the last 2-3 years with this ticking over them, keeping them awake at night, and then it got all thrown out. It truly was disgraceful behavior throughout the entire court case.
It's the kind of detail that probably shouldn't carry this much weight, honestly, but that's exactly how stories about this couple tend to work now. A single ambiguous word in one journalist's piece gets picked apart across dozens of separate videos and threads, each one building an entire theory on a foundation that amounts to nothing more than someone's specific word choice. Maybe it means something. Maybe the writer simply reached for a convenient synonym without thinking about how it would be read. Either way, the actual project remains unconfirmed, and everyone currently speculating about baking formats is guessing exactly as much as you are right now. Meanwhile, a separate confrontation this week says something about how this operation actually functions behind the scenes. Robert Jobson, notably more direct since launching his own independent platform, reportedly challenged another royal correspondent on air over her claim that she hadn't received direct briefings from the Sussex camp about the move. Jobson pushed back hard, suggesting major British papers had indeed been briefed in advance, and that pretending otherwise simply wasn't true. Picture that specific exchange for a second. Two journalists, both covering the same family professionally, one insisting she'd received nothing, the other calling that claim out directly on air in real time. That's not a minor disagreement about phrasing. That's one professional essentially accusing another of lying to an audience, live, over a story with real financial and reputational stakes attached. Jobson didn't hedge it or soften it into a polite difference of opinion. He named the outlets. He called the denial ridiculous. That level of directness between working royal correspondents doesn't happen often, and it happened specifically because this particular story clearly involved coordinated briefing that somebody apparently wanted to pretend hadn't occurred. There's a pattern underneath that exchange worth sitting with for a second, because it keeps repeating. Harry and Meghan's team reportedly briefed selected outlets extensively, shaping coverage in their favor while publicly insisting they just want privacy and don't control what gets written about them. That specific contradiction wouldn't sting nearly as much for a couple who'd never built an entire public identity around being victims of an invasive press. Selective briefing is completely standard practice across the entire industry. The tension here comes specifically from claiming otherwise while doing exactly that. Now back to the court case, because I think it's the more consequential story sitting underneath all the entertainment coverage this week. Strip away the celebrity angle entirely for a second and consider what actually happened in that courtroom. A wealthy claimant, backed by significant legal resources, brought a case, kept pushing it even after their own central witness's credibility collapsed under cross-examination, and lost so comprehensively that the presiding judge decided the ordinary protections against catastrophic cost exposure simply shouldn't apply. That's not spin from a hostile tabloid. That's a formal judicial finding on the record with Harry's name attached to it. Legal teams connected to Harry's case reportedly included associates linked to Byline Investigates, an outlet that's faced its own serious allegations, including claims of unlawful information gathering against journalists. Those allegations have been publicly reported but deserve precise framing rather than treatment as settled fact. What's harder to dispute is that the overall conduct in this specific case, according to the judge's own ruling, went well beyond ordinary aggressive litigation. An interim payment near $12 million reportedly comes due within days. Insurance may cover part of that specific figure, but the broader exposure, potentially exceeding $30 million once final costs are assessed, is a serious blow regardless of how any single payment initially gets handled. Run the actual arithmetic on that for a moment. £30 million is roughly the kind of figure that could fund an entire charitable foundation for a decade, or cover the operating costs of a mid-sized production company for years. Instead, it's reportedly heading toward legal fees connected to a case that was apparently pursued past the point where the evidence still supported it. Every pound of that bill represents a choice made somewhere along the way to keep fighting rather than settle, to keep pressing rather than fold, right up until a judge decided that persistence deserved punishment rather than respect. Did Harry's own conduct after an earlier ruling make this particular decision harsher? Reports suggest he previously issued a statement alongside Baroness Doreen Lawrence calling an earlier ruling a whitewash, language that directly attacked the judiciary itself. Nobody outside the court can confirm whether that statement factored into today's decision, but it's a fair question given how unusually pointed the judge's language reportedly was throughout. Several other claimants were reportedly part of this same case without necessarily endorsing Harry's more combative public statements afterward. If his own conduct outside the courtroom actually contributed to a harsher outcome that affects everyone attached to the case, not just him, which raises real questions about how his co-claimants might currently feel about being tied to him at all. Elton John, for one, has spent decades navigating his own share of legal battles and public controversies without ever generating a ruling quite like this one attached to his name. Being pulled into a judgment this harsh, potentially facing a share of costs running into the millions, over a case he didn't personally drive the messaging around, is exactly the kind of situation that tends to end long professional friendships quietly, without any public statement ever confirming it happened. So here's the full week laid out together. A ruling that leaves Harry facing potentially catastrophic financial exposure, arriving a day before news that Meghan's landed new work specifically based in Britain. A senior royal correspondent giving a notably careful, non-committal answer when asked directly whether the marriage is solid. A detailed, largely unflattering piece from a formerly sympathetic journalist describing real financial strain and an unhappy household. And a pattern of selective briefing that keeps generating friction, even with reporters who've covered this family for years. Lay each thread next to the others, and something starts to look less like a series of unrelated coincidences and more like a household under genuine mounting pressure on nearly every front simultaneously. Money, marriage, career, credibility, all four straining at once, all four surfacing publicly within the same handful of days. It's actually rare for that many separate storylines to converge this tightly without something underneath actually connecting them, even if nobody involved is willing to say out loud exactly what that something is. None of these threads alone proves the marriage is in serious trouble. Plenty of couples survive genuine financial and professional stress without it threatening the relationship itself. But stacked together across a single eventful week, they paint a picture of considerable pressure building on multiple fronts at once, with the timing of Meghan's new job landing in a way that's genuinely difficult to read as pure coincidence, whatever the real explanation actually turns out to be. What do you think? Does the timing between the court ruling and Meghan's new job suggest a coordinated attempt to manage the narrative, or is that reading far more into simple coincidence than the evidence actually supports? Some of you will land firmly on one side of that. Others will see two entirely separate stories that happen to land close together, nothing more sinister than a busy news week. And on the Nicklin ruling specifically, Does the judge's unusually harsh language about the claimant's conduct change how you view the entire case? Or was this always likely to end badly once the key witness's credibility fell apart in front of everyone watching? Let me know your honest take in the comments, because I'm honestly curious whether people are landing where I did on this one or somewhere completely different. And if breakdowns like this one are what you come here for, go ahead and subscribe to Palace Insider so you don't miss the next one.